Thank you. I'm not a good multitasker.
Me either.
Welcome tonight, everyone. I just want to remind you all that we have a lot on our agenda to go through and some kind of unusual things. So just, bear with me a little bit if I stumble. I also want to just tell you that I just got back from Savannah, where they had the first leadership training for COSBA, the Consortium of State School Board Association. It is the replacement for the National School Board Association. And this was their inaugural meeting, so it's kind of interesting to see who is there. But there are 23 states that have joined this new organization. Some have joined or stayed with NSBA, some have moved over completely, some have dual memberships, but it was very, very interesting. We had some great speakers, and I will share things with you as it goes on. I will share with you some of the information that we received. But first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. So it is your responsibility as trustees to come prepared to these meetings, reading your board packet. So I hope you had a chance to read all the minutes. And are there any corrections, comments? If not, is there a motion to accept?
I move we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Ursula. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Lloyd. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Will, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, and I vote
How do you
aye.
vote? Thank
I
you, Will.
vote aye.
It has, thanks. It has been approved unanimously. Next up is public comment. At this time, the board will allow 15 minutes for comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue that's not on our agenda. The chair of the board will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time or you will be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comment. Unless there's a whole bunch of people here, then I would shorten it. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to personnel action items.
And, excuse me, I've had a cold, so my voice is a little croaky. Before you is our routine personnel action items, including resignations, retirements, hires for all of our various employee groups. We're losing some, but gaining some. I think at one point we were down close to 8 FTE in custodial, and I think we're down, Greg said we're down to 1.5. So we keep gaining. So doing great work in the HR side of things and getting people in our positions.
So the first part of this is any clarifying questions that the board might have related to the personnel action items? Are there any clarifying questions? Okay. Is anybody comfortable making a motion?
So I move to approve personal action items as presented.
Thank you, Lloyd. Is there a second? Thank you, Heather. It's been moved and seconded on this action item. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, this would be the time for the board to deliberate. That means weigh the pros and cons for this motion. Anybody have any comments, deliberations? Okay, so ready for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Will, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you, Will. It has been approved unanimously. Next up, business 2023-24 high school recommended course changes. This is something the board has the privilege of doing every year, and it's always exciting to see the new courses that are being proposed. And I know you've heard my song and dance before, but I love this process because it starts with what students are interested in, what teachers are interested in, and it moves up that hierarchy then to department heads, building principals, administration, and it finally lands with us. So I love that it starts at the grassroots level. So Keith, are you
Yeah.
doing this one?
Well, Sue kind of explained it a little bit. You know, obviously it starts with staff getting, input from a lot of different places, including, you know, our students, and from there it goes to the department leaders. If it's approved it with our department leaders, then it goes to, the principal signs off, and then it goes to the all of the department leaders, you know, for discussion. And if it passes through that process, then it comes up to the assistant superintendent's office, and then at that time I meet with, the building principals to go through the proposals. There's kind of a weeding out process the entire time. We ask for changes, do some different things, and then we put it before the curriculum committee. We have a pretty good discussion at the curriculum committee going through. So we've made all those updates that should be, reflected in both the new course proposals for Flathead High School and for Glacier High School. Once it goes through, the curriculum committee process, then it goes to finance, because usually there's budget implications. If you see on here that, you know, the financial impact, fees, materials, supplies, and the budget will not exceed $24,000. You know, we talked about this in curriculum, and we talked about it in, finance committee. So it will have an impact of about $6,500 on the general fund budget, and that would be for textbooks. And the other will be coming out of, whether it's student activity or at the block grant, because it's a normal part of the process. You know, hey, there's startup costs, there's costs for classes, and that's always expected to, come out of, you know, the block grant, or come out of that activity account for some of those items. So entertain any questions? Okay.
So there was an attempt this year to keep our FTE neutral at both high schools. But we know that we're having an increase in, enrollment. So for how long do you think we can keep the same number of students same number of teachers for more students? Or is that a consideration that you guys are thinking about?
So, yeah, you bring up a good point, and, you know, we always have to look at that. And one, we tell the building principals, hey, you know, the FTE is not going to change for the coming year, knowing, you know, where we're at, budgetary. You know, there's a part of it, you know, we always look at it when we look at, in terms of the budget, you know, is there an increased enrollment? You know, what does that account for? Do we really need, this additional class? So sometimes we'll look for alternative places to pull that FTE from. So it might come from grants, it might be short-term, you know, it might come out of the special education budget, you know, through some of the grants within that. So there's a lot of different places, you know, that we look, you know, some of our, go ahead, Micah.
I was also gonna just add that, a lot of times when a new course is proposed, they're actually looking at taking something else off you know, so it's a kind of a modernization or update, if you will, to, curriculum and content, continuing to strive for what students want, and try to honor that. So when our teachers look at it, department leaders, building principals, they do look at it with that lens of all right, if we're gonna truly propose a brand-new course, is something else gonna come off the books? Because even at the end of the day, the pie is so big in terms of the number of courses you can put on a master schedule, and that kids will be able to fill. So that's kind of where that neutral comes from.
But I guess what I'm asking is, with our staying neutral on FTE and our increase in, number of students, is the student to teacher ratio going down in classes? Are we having more students in a classroom than we did have in previous years?
If we have an increase in student enrollment, then, enrollment will go up in some of those classes.
It's in keeping in mind that we added 6 FTE to the high school district, after the last, student enrollment increase, which was about 112 students.
Okay.
And so, there was some room in there for absorbing a few more, students. Our overall enrollment at the high school level was up about 70, between both high schools. So not a significant enough jump to warrant new FTE. But where we may run into some challenges is, you know, registration is usually student-driven. Like, these are the classes I want, and then we kind of look at it, you take a step back and you say, well, we need 12 sections of X, and we only have 10 teachers, or 10 sections worth of FTE, so we need to find another 2.2 FTE. So sometimes we'll even see through this process a request coming back to the board for 0.2 FTE in social studies or science or something along those lines.
Okay, perfect. So that adjustment happens after the student enrollment, or after the master's scheduled, I don't know when
Yeah.
students enroll. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
so
Thank you.
in the preemptive stage of this, they're asking for courses to be approved, and they're not anticipating that they need to ask for more FTE in order to.
Any other questions, comments? Ursula?
Yeah, I will just say as a comment, if anybody looked through the proposals, there was a lot more. We talked about this at curriculum, and we talked about it again today at Flathead. In past years, there's been a few new classes and then some like name changes, and this is, in the years that I have been here, the most different, the biggest changes, the most kind of out of the box thinking. And I was just pointing out, because it's been brought up at both of those meetings, that it's kind of where you can see things actually happening. You know, we've asked the administrators and the teachers to be creative, to come up with new things, and here is that kind of coming to fruition. Things are being thought about and presented, so.
Any other questions? Big smile on your face, Lloyd.
No question.
Anybody willing to make a motion?
I move that we approve I don't see a suggestion.
Course proposal.
Course proposals. I move that we approve the course proposals for Flathead and Glacier High School.
Thank you, Ursula. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lloyd. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, any other deliberation from the board? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Will, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you, Will. It has been approved unanimously. Next up. Is the Innovative Education Program Tax Credit.
Yay! This was the second year of the Innovative Education Program Tax Credit. In the first year, there was $1 million, I'll say, up for grabs. It was gone in 6 minutes. Kalispell Public Schools was able to get $80,000 worth of donations entered at that time, which we felt pretty good about, because Big Sky had $800,000 of the $1 million, And so, it was kind of a race to the top for that. And remember that, it came from our district, a resolution through MTSBA to, relook at that particular piece of legislation and how that, does not provide for equity, in districts of varying sizes and equity to taxpayers who wish to make donations. So there is some current legislation being proposed out there and amendments to that. The program was back again this year, and in that legislation, it provided for an increase from $1 million to $2 million in available tax credits. And we solicited donations from our community. Glad to say that we were able to secure $106,700 worth of donations this year. So we're up $26,700 over last year. And the link here, this is available to anybody who wants to look at it, but this shows you the districts and the amounts that were garnered. You can see that Big Sky School District, K-12 School District in Big Sky, Montana, $895,500. So they garnered almost half of the available tax credit. What was interesting this year, and thanks to Denise and her team, I put them in charge of the data entry because you can have up to 5 people per district, and we have 2 districts, so we could have up to 10 people entering. We were able to get all ours entered in, and then everybody else made the mad dash, and probably within the first 6 minutes, all but about $220,000 was claimed. So then I sent out emails to people who had donated and said, if you have friends that would like to donate, and so we actually had one more donation, $10,000 donation come in for that. And so that's the state report for what those donations look like. Any questions?
This guy doing different.
I think they have
They
billionaires.
have some pretty, I'll just say, financially solvent donors.
So their
Yellowstone Club.
donations are bigger than ours.
Yeah, so if you look at Big Sky, they had 7 donations for almost $900,000. Yeah, so people are donating $125,000 worth of, and these are dollar for dollar income tax credits. And so those can carry forward for up to 3 years. So even if, say, I didn't have that much in income tax, I could spread it out over 3 years. So grateful to Denise and her team for handling all of that. The mad dash didn't seem as quite as serious this year, especially when it was like, oh, wait a minute, there's still money hanging out there.
Yeah, well, and some of our partner schools got some.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there was, I think the amount going up to the 2 million, and there might have been some reticence too on the part of districts, like, man, we couldn't even get it in last year. What are the odds or chances that we're gonna be able to do it this year? And so, glad to see that worked out a little bit better.
Livingston did well.
Yeah, Livingston did great.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this is just an information item only, so any further discussion on it? Thank you, Denise, for getting the magic fingers to type in all the data.
Mm-hmm.
Next,
Somebody from Big Sky coded
Oh.
it.
Kalispell Public School Communication Strategy.
Yeah.
Doing this one, Micah?
I am, I'm just noticing that this was actually intended to be an action item. I think when we copied it over from Finance Committee, we missed that, but,
Okay.
so you want to click on the proposal? Yeah, click that, and then so at the last, board meeting, I mentioned that I had a conversation with Casey Whitehoff, the CEO of, LSW, Architecture and Rep Creative, about the work that they had done in Vancouver, Washington, promoting, school bond issues, levy issues, and, so we just had an initial conversation with them and said, what do you think this would look like? And he said, well, let me get with my team and we'll talk about it. And they submitted a proposal that you can see here. And at Finance Committee, Tom Hadley, who is a consultant with Rip Creative, spent 30 years working for Vancouver Public Schools as the Chief of Staff and Communications Director for that organization. Spoke to the trustees and the committee about the proposal in general. I did ask if Casey could be here tonight to actually share the proposal. He is traveling, so is unavailable. And I said I would do my level best to communicate what was shared, and would also ask that any of the trustees that were at Finance Committee to also chime in if I missed something. But the proposal comes in two parts. The first is what he referred to as strategic planning services, and this is to meet with trustees, administration, and really get a sense for what is it that we're after. Obviously, levies and bonds have different meanings and different implications. I think we're in a particularly challenging situation where our last levy did not pass. I think it was a 60-40 no to yes vote. And one of the challenges that we have is how do we communicate to the larger population of Kalispell in general, with 48,000 registered voters, and most of them being in outlying and surrounding community and not just within Kalispell proper. One of my challenges is I have email access to roughly 6,000 students, families, so that may be 4,000. We have some social media, we have some things that we can do, but the reach isn't quite far enough. If 70% of the voting population does not have students in our schools, there's this wide demographic that isn't reached. And so what is the strategy for how you reach them? And just knowing that, based off of what Denise has calculated so far, we're going to be roughly $400,000 over budget on the high school side, and another $600,000 on the elementary side. And so we've referenced kind of the cliff when ESSER money runs out and some things that have been helping to carry us along. There's kind of a harsh reality that's going to set in. Going back to 2007, having not passed a levy, I can't answer for why not. I think we showed in the levy history that 12 of those years we haven't even asked for one. I think our board has always been very conscientious about when to ask, and we feel like the time is now. We're running almost 90% of fully funded at the high school level. Those just continue to create challenges if we're going to continue to support our employees with wage increases. We're settled for right now, but in a year from now, we have negotiations again. We've seen significant increases in cost of living and inflationary costs that have been borne not only by the district in terms of utilities and supplies and curriculum and technology and all the things that we use just operationally for the district. But then, our employees also feel those same exact pinches when it comes to those kind of things. So just looking for what's the right answer, and I don't know that I have it, but we have to try something. And so Casey and Tom had put this together, and to be honest, there was a little sticker shock when I saw this, $15,000 for a half-day workshop. Tom said, he talked to the Finance Committee, he said, well, I can give you some ideas of what we do with other organizations and in the costs that are associated with them for these limited one-time services. In this situation, Casey is actually donating his time to this effort. He's a part of our community, wants to see it be successful. So that is all very much appreciated. And so, looking at it through the lens of who's doing this type of work and what expertise is required, it seems like it's probably a reasonable sum, considering the short duration, the limited timeline, and those kind of things. So if this proposal is accepted, then what they propose next is the strategic communication services. And they listed a bunch of workshop discussion would focus on, these types of things, but then if you go to the other, attachment, they sent us some samples of the work that they've done with, Vancouver Public Schools, and it's in your board packet. There's some links to videos. Things are really well done, really well put together, a very positive message. They really try and, articulate, you know, the cost to taxpayers. And so there's tons of, I just combined it all into, well, Sherry combined it all into one PDF for me, because it came in like 12 different emails. There's door hangers, there's flyers, there's, all sorts of stuff, informational that they can help us with and help us put together and really, explain to our community the need, the cost, and the why. So my intent was to ask the board tonight to, approve this, but that's not how it ended up on the agenda. And trying to think through, Robert's Rules of Orders. Jack, do you have an idea on?
technically, we're not supposed to decide on something that's not an action item on the agenda.
Monday?
We could do it on Monday.
We could do it on Monday.
I have a quick question. The last meeting we had,
Mhm.
when we voted on the election,
Yeah,
to overall, that wasn't as an action item either at that point in the day. It was also, there's a discussion information.
we had the resolutions. Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Just bringing that up.
Questions?
Michael, did he give you a ballpark?
That's what I was
No.
thinking.
Because when I'm assessing those.
No, we didn't. But I can tell you, you know, last year, we tried to work with a company called, Kinetic Marketing out of Billings. And I'll just say they kind of missed the mark on getting things out. We created flyers, we created billboards, we did, a lot of that kind of work. And usually what it boils down to is there's kind of a charge for the graphic design of it. And then the real cost is if you send out a mailer, right, is the postage on that, the printing cost and then the postage cost on that. If you do door hangers, you have the printing cost, but you're asking people to go around and hang things on doors, so there's not a mailing cost to it. If it's just electronic, so everything has a different cost, but he did not ballpark for me. I think that question was actually asked by Diane.
So I was looking, I mean, if we're, because I called Denise and I was thinking, we're rough estimate sending out mailers. Even if we went a postcard, which, I mean, I love some of these options that they've given us here, even that trifold, great idea. However, just like you said, postage, and I know we have a bulk rate, but looking up even a postcard postage for normal rate is 35 cents per mailer, which we're looking at least 48,000 mailers. Plus,
Well,
it's like,
that's 48,000 registered voters, so that wouldn't be mailers.
Okay.
Because you just send one to
well, I
an
guess
address.
we cut them in half, but, I mean, it's like over 50 grand just in mailers.
It was, I know, from last year, it was not that much. There's some other discounted rate through their bulk mailing, because they'll usually contract with a printing service, to do it. Yeah, we weren't anywhere close to that last year. I can work on that for Monday. Like, I could probably pull up what I had from last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, even just getting into a graphic alone is.
Yeah, and I guess I would say I recognize that there's a sticker shock to this, but I don't know what else, like, this is the cost of doing business. You know, if you look at what does it cost for someone to run for office, what does it cost for someone to, you know, run a simple campaign or, you know, any of those kind of things, what's the cost to run a full page ad in the Daily Interlake? All those things are super expensive. That's just the cost of that. And part of our charge and the direction from the board is we need to communicate. All right, well, we have to be willing to pay for those communications. In this, you know, the funding that we identified for supporting that would be the interest earnings off of our investment. And so we have, I think Denise said, roughly 65,000 in interest earnings right now. So we feel like we have a chunk of money that isn't taxpayer money. It isn't, anything that's pulling off of a general fund, generally not spoken for. It just kind of amasses and can be kind of seen and used as a rainy day fund. In the past, the board has used Toyota raffle ticket sales, that portion that comes back to the district, to support those kind of things. So, it's a question to the board if you want to do it. These are ideas, things that we've been working on.
Can you talk a bit to, I mean, you said that state numbers, 600,000 on the high school side, 400,000 on the elementary side, but we've had these board discussions, every January and every March, and every November for years, should we run a levy? How much should we run it for? What's the best strategy? But it feels really desperate to me this year, and I was wondering if you could speak to why the tenor feels different this year than other years. It's really felt like a choice, and it feels much more like something we need to do now. I mean, I know about the sunsetting of the ESSER, and is it just build up over years of, every year we're 2% lower in our, or how much numbers are numbers. What does that actually mean? Does that mean
Sure.
losing half our teachers? I mean, what does that really mean?
Well, it's really, when you think about it to a district of our size, and keeping in mind that we have gone through budget cutting processes in years past because of not passing levies. Things like we reduced the tutor union, we eliminated hall monitors, we've eliminated things that provide safety and security for our students. We've made cuts to our activities. We've made cuts to teacher positions through attrition, not necessarily a RIF, but saying, oh, so-and-so retired, guess what, we're not replacing that person. Guess what, your class sizes went from 28 to 30. We've done same thing with para positions. So when you're talking cuts of any kind of magnitude in the hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, you're talking personnel or you're talking programs. And looking forward, right, with the things that we're hoping to be able to do as a district, and just trying to recognize, what does $2.6 million below 100% funding look like for our high school and for our students, right? What programs and things can we not offer or can we not do? I think we've done a really good job of running really lean, in just about every facet of operations in our district. We have 3 grounds people to cover, I don't know how many hundreds of acres. We have, skeleton crews in our custodial departments. We cut back on nurses. We cut back on all of these different things and programs and things that people come to expect from our schools. And so looking at a deficit off of this year, and then looking forward to the cost increases that we know we're going to expect from next year. We've already settled with our classified staff, our KEA staff, our custodial staff. We know those are going to be increases to the budget. Granted, there will be some funding increases coming from the state legislature. Right now, the number's sitting at 2.57%. Inflation is somewhere in that 7 to 9%. So, in that inflationary increase, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Denise, only applies to 44% of our budget. So it's not even 2.57 on all of it, it's 2.57 on less than half of it. Some of the things that kind of kept us afloat are student enrollment increases. So we had 112 new students. Guess what? We got some A and B money for those students. But once that A and B money settles in and it kind of covers those base costs of here's what it looks like to add those students, now we've got those ongoing costs because those students haven't gone away. We continue to get bigger. And so when you look at the A and B for a particular student and you say your district is only 90% funded, we're only getting 90% of the A and B value for those students. I kind of went off there.
No.
Like, what was your question?
It was how dire is it and how different is this year from other years? What, why does it feel so imperative that we do this year?
Well,
Other years
I
we've all decided, this year it feels like.
I think about it, just through the lens, and, Lloyd, you voted no the other night. I'm just curious, what do you think we should cut to make that work? right? It's easy to say, no, I don't support raising these taxes or asking, our community for these levies. But what is it that you recommend we cut? Is it activities? Is it the BOAG program? Is it nurses? Is it teachers, electives? That's the problem. And it's kind of a rhetorical question, because
I did not have a list of things to cut, but I did have a comment.
Right, those are the things that go through my mind, and I think when Rebecca asked the question, and I think it's fair for the board to consider, is, if we don't pass this levy, what are we going to do? We can't operate in the red. We use our interlocal agreement money, we use ESSER funds, we use grant funding, we use all these different pots of money and kind of shift and try to make things work. But there is a point where you say, gosh, we're gonna have to do something. And I would point to Helena and Bozeman, where they're cutting $4 million out of their budgets, right? I mean, we aren't even at full 100%, and they're at 100%, and they're having to cut $4 million out of their budget. So they're talking like closing entire schools down and cutting 27 staff and, those kind of things. So, I've always felt like, as a board who, one of your primary obligations is to manage the budget, and adopt a budget and look at the expenditures and the different things. We have been a very conservative school district when it comes to that. And, I worry a little bit. I want to be able to attract and retain good employees. We're the lowest paying state in the union. Why would someone want to come and teach in Montana for the lowest pay? I could go to Wyoming, Idaho, anywhere just in the Northwest and make $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 more than I would make in Kalispell. Ask the question. So, as a community, we can say, gosh, we're really tired of paying taxes. I get it, I pay them too. But at the same time, we have an obligation to provide an education for our students and the education that our community expects and wants our kids to have. Somehow, and I'm hoping through a process like this, we can identify what is that message that we can tell our community that says, this is important, this is worth paying some extra money for, regardless of all the other things going on, that this is something we need to continue to support.
So I have another little question, kind of along the line of Heather's question. We had talked about like the cost of mailers and things like that. The 15,000 just covers the day, the half day, but the half day would lay out which of those things, for the second part, I understand that there's all of the cost that goes with actually implementing it. Do you know even, is it then by the hour for them to make graphics, or I just didn't quite understand.
I don't know. There could be a flat chart. I'm guessing this is going to come back to us as kind of like an a la carte. One thing Tom, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he says video production is really expensive.
Okay.
Right? You got to get a crew here. You got to have sound. You got to have the right camera equipment, the right lighting. You got to put it all together, edit it, and then what are you going to do with it? If it just goes to Facebook and it's only viewed 495 times,
right, that's
495 really good views. But if you're trying to reach 44,000, maybe our money would be better spent on a mailer that gets to everybody.
Right. Well, and I've said before, if I'm one of the views,
right,
I'm
it doesn't count.
I'm the wrong person to be watching this. And could we, in the contract with them, could we piecemeal, if there were parts that we thought we could do ourselves, if we had people that would volunteer to do things, do we have any kind of a commitment to use their services for everything, or we can use them for what we need them for and put it together? Do you know?
I think, I wish Casey were here. I don't have the answer to that, but what I would think is that they want to be really consistent in the messaging, in the graphics, in the color scheme, in the everything that goes into this kind of work. And they may say, we'll put together the graphic for Instagram
Right, right, okay.
I'm really good in Canva.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I do have one more, it's a comment on this one, and I just feel like if we are going to be moving forward with the levy, that my suggestion is that we be really aware of the messaging, like from here on out, we've been putting out the number there that we are going to be 400 and some thousand under on the high school level, on the high school side, but I think it's really important that we start saying that we are running at 2.6 million under fully funded. Like, that $400,000 doesn't really paint the picture, and I just think that right now, like, we are in, like, that we start saying, like, that $400,000 is not really the number that paints the picture, and we say, like, what is that, the big number that we are?
Right, well, the 400,000 is just for this, what's currently happening this year.
Right, like what we would have, right.
Now add in all the inflationary costs,
Right.
the salary increases,
Yeah.
and, you know, I think in our district, we said a 1% increase across the board is $1 million.
$1 million, right. Yeah.
So if we're at 2% across the board, that's $2 million, plus the $1 million that we're short already on the elementary and high school side.
Right. And all I'm saying is we are already, like you said, Bozeman is running at 100%, like, just to make sure that the community sees, like, we are not asking to catch up. We are asking, you know, we are still staying lean with everything we talk about, kind of thing, and just make sure that the bigger number
Yeah.
that shows all the cuts that have been made, because we've talked about this before. I don't think the community is aware of any of the cuts that have been made, and that's amazing, and I think it's a testament to the effort that has been put in to keep providing the most we can with the least money, but I don't think the community knows that any cuts have been made. I don't think the community knows that we are running below budget every year.
Last year, I mean, we were talking about it, letting the community know just at a basic of where we were starting at. They knew, I mean, every person I talked to, every person I could talk to, everybody else who was out there talking, that was the talking point where we were telling them. And the seller was, it was coming in even on their taxes this last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, it was balancing out, right, Denise?
Mm-hmm.
So this year, we have an even bigger hoop jump because taxes will be going up this year. We're all dealing with inflation. We all see it at, you know, the grocery store, the gas pump, that it's a huge hurdle this time to come. I think we really have to gauge the first of where they're at. I mean, is this, we're at 60-40 last time. Possibly closer this time, or are we even further of a gap? But just as an idea, where you were talking, like, even if we did door hangers, if we did go this route, I think it would be wise of us not just to send out, maybe sending out mailers to outlying districts, because my district alone, I could not go door to door. I went to as many doors as I possibly could, and I met as many people as I could during my election, but it's impossible. You need mailers for that. But the districts that we can reach, it would be very wise for us to be walking door to door and talking to as many. That's the only way we are gonna gauge where this community is at and to get the real information out.
What's their track record? Is Vancouver the only other, bond or levy they've gone for? And was it a similar difficult community interaction situation?
I think Tom said, like, 100%. I mean, it was good. Like, they successfully run so many campaigns, and, part of this, and I think even thinking about it through the long term, is that, like, it's a continual campaign, whether they're asking for money or not. The campaign is, here's what we know about Vancouver Public Schools. This is what, you know, and you can see that in our messaging through social media. You know, that's a pretty big thing, but Also, you know, community way bigger than us and has different funding structures and formulas and things. You can kind of see it in some of their work. But yeah, they've pretty much everything.
One thing I got out of this was that it was not one and done. They continued with the communication. And
Yeah.
I like that. And I think we have a tendency to communicate and then stop. And I liked their strategy of the constant communication.
Jennifer?
So my thought is that it would be a lot more meaningful for me as a parent and as a community member to hear from the people that are in the schools, not a company from out of state. Like, I don't feel like I hear a lot from the teachers. I don't feel like the teachers are on social media being like, hey, we're doing so many great things in Kalispell Public Schools. And I don't feel like us as board members are doing a very good job about, hey, we're doing so many great things in Kalispell Public Schools, and we've got like these big ideas, and just like our own messaging, I feel like is really lacking in districts. Like, where's the personal touch? I think it's really lacking, and I think it would also be really meaningful if a lot of the things that go out, like mailers or whatever, the design is done by our Kalispell students. Like, hey, we're doing this transformational learning, look at what our graphic design students are learning, and look at what professions they can go into because they are doing like such great work. This is just like putting messaging out there that we're starting to really push these kids in the right direction, to like push them into careers and things like that, and really showcasing things that are happening here rather than having, I mean, 'cause I do that all day. That's what I do. I do communications, and I make flyers on Canva and mail stuff out all the time. But I think it would just be more meaningful if, you know, kids were in it, and it's not things coming from the schools themselves.
Thanks, Jennifer. I know Lloyd, you had a comment, and Jack has a comment.
Go ahead, Jack.
In the presentation from Tom, and this might help answer your question, he was the communications director for Vancouver schools for a long time. 30 years. So he was able to coordinate the things, so he could, I don't know if he actually did, coordinate, just say curriculum activities that could maybe support it. We don't have anybody in that position. And no schools in Montana have anybody in that position. I don't even know if the legislature would like to have somebody, would feel comfortable having somebody in that position promoting schools. So we have a completely different atmosphere here in Montana than in Washington, and going back to your comment about continuous work, being a communications director, he was able to do it year after year after year. We don't have that luxury here at all. So we have a completely different atmosphere and dilemma to overcome in doing all that. So what we're talking about is an annual exercise that we're going through. I hear the same things each and every year. Maybe different voices, but I hear the same thing each year. And as far as, and we all have our own little methods of communicating with the arena that we happen to evolve around all the time. And and in Vancouver, it was all one school district, K-12. We have, our dilemma isn't with the Kalispell Elementary School District. Our dilemma is with all the rural school districts. Support exists within the elementary school district. The support does not exist in all the rural partner districts. And that's where the magical answer lies, and that's where somebody's focus needs to be. And I have no idea what the answer is for that group, because it's been a historic pattern. They're more interested in supporting their local schools than they are in supporting the high school, even though that's where the students ultimately end up. So, and I don't know where I want to go with this, except that we're regurgitating everything each year. So if we went back and read the minutes from the prior year at this time, you'd hear the same things over and over again. And I think it's time that we have to do something. And yes, we've used communication people at different times in the past, different roles, whether they were internal or external, and some had marginal success, some took different approaches, and those could all be discussed at a later time, not now. Some, I think, were really ones that could lay the groundwork for a continuous reuse all the time, and others were just one-time things. But we do need to come up with some type of a longer-term approach to this, and it's gonna cost some money, and we've gotta come up, figure out, and just put it in a budget, and it's gotta be there, whether it's a $15,000 budget or a $50,000 budget. We just have to learn to say, this is what we have to put in there in order to market the school to the people that both do and don't have students in the school.
Thanks, Jack. You forgot to turn your microphone on.
Can you repeat that?
Sorry, Will. So please repeat all that. Lloyd?
This might be a remedial question or a silly question, but if this is 15,000 for a half-day workshop, I just guessing, since we don't have a number, that, I mean, I don't know what we're thinking about putting into this marketing campaign, but maybe $100,000, $50,000, I have no idea. But why, if this is just to get the levy passed, was there ever any thought to hiring somebody who is a communications/marketing person who works on this year-round versus just for the levy? You're laughing, I know it's probably a silly question, but.
No, well, no, I don't think it's a silly question. I think we have talked about it as a board at various times. I think we kind of saw that come out during our strategic planning process. It's kind of embedded in there, but it doesn't say specifically, you know, and really what needs to be debated is, could Kalispell Public Schools benefit from having a communications director? I could easily make that argument, yes, on a lot of different fronts, because it is a continual job to do that. We currently pay someone, you know, $30 an hour to post to social media and manage all of our social media stuff. Pretty insignificant costs, but those costs could be rolled into that position. We talk about marketing, right? We're gonna spend a significant amount of money this time around if the board approves it, but, well, if we found the money to do that, could we find the money to support that position? There's always a little bit of hesitation in that, because trying to keep in mind our other employees, right, who say, well, why do you need a marketing director? Right? I need more money in my pocket as a teacher or as a custodian or as a, you know, I can't believe you're going to spend money on those. So you kind of get sensitive to that type of criticism, you know, from the other employee groups. But I think it's a great question, and I think it's one the board should really discuss. And maybe through this process, it's a recommendation coming from me, and then we can debate it. And if the board says, yeah, this is something we want to pursue, then let's do it. And if it's not, then let's not.
I may or may not be for a marketing director long-term, but I do think, to me, it's obvious the district does need to ask for money this year. And I have voted against levies in the past, and I haven't thought it was the right time. I do think at this time on our need, you know, there's the needs-based and can you pass it based. And on the needs-based, I think we absolutely have to do it come hell or high water. We may in the future at some point consider a marketing director, but I don't think we can get a marketing director hired and up to speed in time for a May levy. So I think that's a great long-term possible conversation, but I'm not sure it's do this or hire somebody, because I don't think we could hire somebody, you know, in time, unless, this guy wants to quit his business and come work for us.
No.
That's what I was gonna, for,
Well, we couldn't afford it.
40,000 a year, it's an offer.
We couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And I would just say, like, not a marketing director, a communications director, someone who, I mean, there are people who have degrees in communications, and this is what you communicate, when you communicate, how you communicate, a very, specific skill set. Embedded in that, I think, in the communications is the marketing aspect of it, without question, but, yeah.
Ursula.
We actually talked about a communications director at the government meeting, the board governance committee. And, I mean, I just want to say, I do not think that's a dumb question at all, and I wish that we could spend the $15,000 or however many $1,000 it's going to end up being on a communications person too. That's not maybe this year, but yeah, I mean, it came up in the committee meeting. We talked about other things that they could do, you know, things that in the past even HR has done, where it's like, well, HR works with negotiation though. If we had a communications person that was not a part of negotiation, what kind of communication would that open up? You know, all of the things, all the places where communication is hard, where it feels like it would be valuable, and things like this are not going to stop coming up, where it's like, oh, well, if we had a person, we wouldn't be hiring this one. So I don't know, I think it's definitely worth talking about.
And I assure you, this will not be the last time we talk about the possibility of a communications director, because it has come up in many different committees, under many different circumstances. You know, we talked about the need that this is a unique skill, that, right now, yeah, we've hired a teacher to do this in her free time, in her spare time. You know, Micah puts this together very well, but it is a need that we have. And I think 2023 is a year where we seriously need to consider, you know, adding a communications director. But I also agree, we don't have time to do that, you know, in time for the levy. And because it does require some professionalism in this, and we've talked about that, nobody at this table, and I mean nobody, has that skill set to do it. And, well, okay, Scotty, maybe you, but but I can support this proposal for a couple of reasons. It is our responsibility not to just manage the budget, but to provide adequate resources to provide educational opportunities for every student in our district. We need the same message to be going out. We don't need to be casting any kind of doubt and confusion in any of our community groups, in any of our social media. We need professionals to put together a program for us, and we need to support it. I love the ideas that we have about, you know, the personal touch, but I also don't want to start chipping away at the professional. But I think we do have choices, you know, an à la carte thing. I like whoever said that. I really liked that. I think we have that option too. But, you know, we have to be willing to pay for it. And I can, you know, support this. I was a little confused because I wasn't at the Finance Committee meeting Friday. I apologize. But I was a little confused with the strategic planning term in there. I thought, wait, we've already done that. We don't need to do it again. But then I realized it's slightly different, strategic planning. Yeah. And a point of clarification before I forget to mention it, we did look back at the agenda for the previous meeting, and it was listed as an action item, so we're.
I was reading it wrong on that.
Yeah, it was easy too, because I did it first too.
Yeah, no
I
worries.
thought, what? Yeah,
He helped me out.
yeah. Is there any other discussion on this? We do need, it is an action item, so. Lloyd?
It is not.
Wait, I
It
thought
is
it
not
was,
now.
oh.
We have to vote
Oh,
on that
that's right, you guys get to do it on Monday.
do we have a way to move this to, a vote tonight, or is it not within our?
We can't.
We shouldn't,
Okay.
just because it
We have
wasn't
to-
publicly noticed, so giving people an opportunity to comment on it if they want.
Did you have another comment?
Yeah, I do have to say, I can't see, you know, given the climate, given the fact that we're, you know, moving toward recession, at least that's what the indicators are showing. And given everything that's going on right now, our housing prices increasing, our property taxes increasing because of our inflated, values. I can't see throwing good money after bad money, you know, if I had, just within me, if I had to guess and give this a percentage of what percentage do I think that this could possibly pass, given those items. It sounds like 15-20%, and I just have a hard time, you know, why can't we put out, you know, a questionnaire or do something to get the community's temperature on this? You know, if we ran a levy, would you support it, yes or no, and if not, or if so, why? You know, just to get, because that's a lot cheaper than throwing $150,000-$200,000 down the hole when we have a really slim chance. I feel like it's a slim chance of getting it. And I don't mistake, I think we need the money. I know we need the money.
Mhm.
And it's not that I don't think we do, and it's not that I don't want it. It's that I just feel like we're throwing that money down a hole and it's just not gonna get anywhere, personally.
Like, is there any way we can have even a guesstimate before we vote on this of where we might be, I mean, not to exceed $100,000, or do we have a clue?
Yeah, I honestly don't. I can ask Casey. He's usually pretty responsive to email, if we could get, an idea from that. Tom was pretty vague, just in part because, you know, if the only thing we're gonna do is a door mailer, right, and it's gonna cost with the graphic design cost, the printing cost, but they might not recommend that that's your best strategy. The best strategy might be the door hanger, because that's getting you out face to face with people. It's gonna save you some money, but it also gets that contact. But they might also say, you know, we really need some social media posts to go out, and we're gonna design those, and so I don't know, but I think the board could set a budget and say, you know, and if Casey knows that going into it, he might look at it and say, well, gosh, you know, these are the only things that we could do within that budget. But, you know, that's my guess, is that it's just gonna kind of come back as à la carte. And some of these strategies, they may say, this isn't what we need to do, but, you know, one of the strategies in there is like automated phone call scripts, right? So they're gonna give me a script, and you a script, and you a script, and we're gonna put it out there, and then we're gonna call Monday morning, 6:30 a.m. There's a message from Kalispell Public Schools Superintendent Micah Hill. Like, those things may cost very little, those may cost very little, in that, but I think the board could set a budget if we don't have a finite number.
Yeah.
Denise, what does it cost for us to do a, mail ballot election? Right, and that includes printing and mailing?
Yeah.
Yep. So, and having experienced 2 campaigns, it's not hard to spend $20,000 or $40,000 to do different marketing things. And, to do it, and so that's gonna be our example right there, $50,000 to cover things. And when you're dealing with a marketing company, you have to figure out, well, they're gonna be spending time behind the scenes that we're never gonna see, that has to do with finding phone numbers and finding addresses, both physical addresses and media addresses, where they can do things on Facebook and so forth, which would be less expensive. It's still gonna be expensive, and then whether it's putting videos together, you could spend $5,000 just on one video to put it together, or on enough takes to make numerous videos out of it to be able to send different messages out. So it's just something that, so whether we're talking 50,000 or 100,000, none of those numbers are a surprise as for what we would want to accomplish. Lloyd, going back to your comment or concern about finding out what the taxpayer is gonna say, I think that we already know what the taxpayer is gonna say because they've done it each time. So what else are we gonna learn if you put out a survey? We won't learn anything new or different, because they've already said no numerous times. So it comes down to the ultimate question that we have to answer is, have we gotten the right information out to the people, or have the people even received the right information? Or how do you get the information out? And I don't have answers to that either, because there's numerous ways that people retrieve and retain information. The retaining of information is interesting because you can't hear it once, you have to hear it 7 times in order to retain it and begin to believe it. And that by itself costs money to get it out. And those are just proven retention tests over time. So spending money is unfortunately the good and the bad, because we're gonna be criticized for it. But I don't know, and if we sit and choose to do nothing, then we'll be faced with some budget cuts. And if we wanna go the budget cut route, I guess we're gonna have to go the budget cut route. But we've gotta make some attempt, and the only way you can do it is to spend money unless we choose not to spend money. In which case, we're gonna have a whole set of different decisions to make. And it'll be a lot more than $100,000.
When you were talking to Casey's the name, you were talking to Casey, it seemed like there was an understanding there that part of this battle is going to be changing people's minds. Like, I don't know what the temperature was in Vancouver, but here, it's not just getting the information out, it's changing people's minds.
Is that a question?
Yeah, like, did he seem to have an understanding of that?
I think one of the things that is appealing about Casey and his team is that's what they specialize in, is that type of messaging. And, you know, in all fairness, I mean, when I talked with Kinetic last year, they said the same thing, like, it can't be one and done type stuff. It's a constant, ongoing thing. And if you don't have a person dedicated to that, or, you know, in Tom's case in Vancouver, I mean, he had a team of people. It wasn't just a one-man show. This is like, I've got a graphics art department, you know, paid staff, I've got writers, I've got media specialists, I've got, you know, all of those different components to it that, like, we'll never have that until we get to be the size of Vancouver. That's one of the things. I think even in the proposal, you know, they talk about that, right? A funding measure approved by local voters is a possible solution to ensure that KPS achieves its priority goals and continues to produce high-quality, well-rounded education. You know, and they're looking at it through that lens, that, you know, it's a communication issue. And how do you communicate effectively and to the right audience? Not just a minute for Micah once a month. There's more to it.
Any other questions, comments?
Do we need to do anything else to get it on that one?
No. Gary heard us. It'll be there.
I do have a little concern of getting Monday too cluttered. I mean, Monday seemed a fairly specific special meeting, but you think we can just,
That'll be
Do
the
this
only
vote
thing.
for
We've
half an
had
hour.
most of the discussion right now,
okay,
so I would hope that it would go
you
quicker
could pass it.
on Monday. Okay, so moving on. Elementary consent agenda.
You got that one, Liz? I move that we approve the elementary consent agenda.
Thank you, Ursula. Is there a
Seconded.
second? Thank you, Rebecca. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Any further deliberations? All in
Jennifer did
favor?
have a.
I just have a really quick
Oh.
question. The only early Ks are Russell and Edgerton, is that right? Currently in the district?
No, Peterson has. Peterson has
no,
one, I
Peterson
think.
has it too.
Yeah. Okay,
Russell,
you have
Edgerton,
it.
Peterson,
I thought Peterson
I thought we had 4.
lost their, or like they had one like last.
They still have it.
Yeah, they have
Yeah.
it this year.
Yeah.
Russell
Yeah.
has it still? So
Yep.
Russell, Edgerton, Elrod, Peterson, I think all have
Yeah.
it.
Elrod has an early K too?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, we have 4, sections of it.
In a rural school, aside from Evergreen, there's none?
No, I'm aware that Marion has early K, Ice Prairie, yeah. But.
What's I called Jack Eggenberger, and I was like, hey, what schools have early K? And he's like, there aren't any, except Evergreen.
No, no, there, it's, yeah, and a lot of schools, it's new for them this year.
Okay,
But this is also one of the things in current legislation that looks like it's going away.
that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, it's been moved and seconded, so elementary trustees in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next, district-wide consent agenda.
And just wanted to point out, we did a little change up on the, agenda with the elementary consent agenda sitting as a separate item, from the high school, in part because in Robert's Rules of Orders and the way that the program is set up, you can't separate out the 2 motions, in one consent agenda item. So we split them out again. The other thing I would point out is that the Safe Return to Schools and Continuity of Service Plan is now sitting in the consent agenda on the district-wide. It's a live link, you can click it and review it anytime you want. It is due to be reviewed every 6 months and approved by the board, and at that, interval, we'll pull it off the consent agenda and bring it out as a separate item for you.
Good move, I like that.
Thanks.
Cleaner,
Second then.
yeah. Okay, any comments, questions about the district-wide consent agenda? Not. Anybody feel comfortable making the motion?
So I move we approve the consent agenda as provided.
Thank you, Lloyd. Is there a second? Thank you, Heather. Is there any public comment on this one? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Will, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Thank you. It has been approved unanimously. Next up on the agenda, thank you for those votes, by the way. Next up is our second public comment time. Let me just ask before I read my paragraph one more time. Is there any public comment at this time? Okay. Then I'm not even going to go through my spiel. I'm getting it memorized, so. Let's see. At this time, we are moving into executive session because I have made the decision as board chair that the individual's right to privacy exceeds the public's right to know. So I am asking everyone to please, everyone not involved at this table, to please leave the room. And we will take a short adjournment, just get the room clear. Okay, so 3 minutes.